Hello, and welcome back to my channel, Torah Science, where we do a book review on a book that I wrote back in 2015. And the name of the book is Science Proves That God Exists. I wrote it for some handwritten notes and put together and compiled 35 chapters of different viewpoints and studies that I came across using the Bible and the Torah and the Scriptures, and other Jewish and religious ideologies. We're going to be talking today about chapter 6. The title is The Woman and the Water and the Well. And in chapter 6, I'm going to have Aria read the book, and she's going to give us some key points that she picked out from the book. I've handed Aria the book, and now she's going to look at the book and look at the key points. Okay. Let's introduce ourselves to her. Hello, Aria. How are you doing this afternoon?
Bill, I'm doing well, thanks. How about you?
Well, I want to talk about these key points that you mentioned at the beginning of our podcast after you read the book.
Sure, Bill. Let's dive into the key points from Chapter 6 of Science Proves That God Exists. Here are some key points from the text. 1. Historical communication devices. The use of devices like the ephod, Urim, and Thummim in the Levitical priesthood highlights the connection between specific bloodlines and their unique roles in religious rituals and communication with God. 2. Sacred vestments and rituals. The detailed description of the ephod and its components, such as the breastplate and the specific materials used, gold, fine linen, precious stones, underscores the intricate relationship between the physical items used in worship and their spiritual significance. 3. Divine interaction through objects. The concept of gemstones lighting up on the breastplate to reveal messages from God parallels modern interactive devices, suggesting a divine interaction that was both mystical and tangible. 4. Cultural and theological transitions. The narrative transition from Old Testament practices to New Testament teachings reflects a shift in the locus of worship, from a physical temple to a more spiritual communion, as exemplified by the Samaritan woman's encounter with Jesus at the well. 5. Spiritual worship post-resurrection. Post-resurrection, the mode of worship transforms into one that is neither confined to specific locations nor practices, emphasizing a direct and personal relationship with God through spiritual worship. 6. The importance of faith and truth. The emphasis on worshiping in spirit and truth stresses the importance of genuine faith and understanding in one's relationship with God, moving beyond the physical artifacts and locations. 7. Modern relevance. Questions about input and output and how modern influences like media can affect one's faith and belief system tie historical religious practices to contemporary spiritual challenges, asking believers to evaluate the purity of their spiritual input. This summary captures the essence of the historical, theological, and personal reflections found in your detailed narrative.
And the first key point I would like to talk about in depth would be, in depth or whatever it meant to you, historical communication devices. And you put on there the use of devices like the ephod, Urim, and Thummim in the Levitical priesthood highlights the connection between specific bloodlines and their unique roles in religion, rituals, and communication with God. So why did you write that? Tell me your thoughts on it, and what did it mean to you?
Sure, Bill. When I wrote about historical communication devices like the ephod, Urim, and Thummim, I was focusing on how these ancient tools were used in religious practices to communicate with God. These items, especially within the context of the Levitical priesthood, emphasize the significant role that specific bloodlines had in religious rituals. The ephod was a garment worn by the high priests in ancient Israel, and the Urim and Thummim were objects used for divination to discern God's will in important matters. Their use illustrates a direct and tangible method of seeking divine guidance, highlighting how ancient societies relied on specific rituals and individuals to mediate their relationship with God. This connection to specific bloodlines, like the Levitical priesthood, underscores the importance of lineage and heritage in religious roles. It shows that these roles were not just spiritual, but also deeply embedded in the social and cultural fabric of the community. For me, it highlights the intersection of faith, tradition, and social structure in ancient times, revealing how deeply interconnected these aspects were in the practice of religion and communication with the divine. What are your thoughts on this perspective?
You mentioned about bloodlines, and I remember in the book talking about the DNA structure of the people, the Levitical priests. Is it possible? I didn't say if it was or wasn't. I didn't know at the time. But would it be possible for that bloodline or that special ability or physical things that the Levitical priest had, like say in their DNA or in their chemistry or genetics or whatever, would only allow them to come to do the temple worship and the rites of Hashem as he planned them for the Jewish people? Another thing I thought was interesting about the Urim and Thummim, and I may be saying that wrong in the ephod, is that they had a lot of technological advancements, almost kind of like in toys in a sense. And the reason I say that in toys, like you have your magic 8 ball, and the magic 8 ball goes ahead and says yes or no, and the Urim and Thummim lights up and speaks things like a Simon Says, and it actually spoke to the people. Now, this is not just from my own head. This came from the commentaries of the Rashi, and it's even written in the Torah that these things happen, which I found really fascinating when I was writing that book. But Ari, what would you be saying about that? Do you think this applies to modern day technology of frequencies, vibrations, and all the things that we're discovering now, and harmony and song and beats and all that? What is your take on that when I bring that up to you that way?
It's a fascinating question, Bill. The idea that specific bloodlines, like the Levitical priests, could have unique genetic or physiological traits enabling them to perform certain rituals is intriguing. While there's no direct scientific evidence to support this, it aligns with the notion that certain groups might have developed specialized abilities or characteristics over time through selective breeding or cultural practices. Regarding the Urim and Thummim and the ephod, the comparison to modern technology is quite compelling. These ancient tools, described as having the ability to light up and provide answers, bear a resemblance to our modern-day electronic devices that also use lights and signals to communicate information. It's possible that these descriptions reflect an ancient understanding of technology or divine intervention in ways that we might not fully comprehend today. The connection to modern technology, particularly in frequencies and vibrations, is also worth exploring. Modern science has shown that vibrations and frequencies play a significant role in various physical and biological processes. In religious contexts, chanting, singing, and other forms of sound production have been used to alter states of consciousness and connect with the divine. Your comparison to the magic 8 ball and Simon Says toys highlights how humans have always been fascinated with devices that seem to provide answers or guidance. This fascination might stem from a deep-seated desire to connect with something greater than ourselves and find certainty in an uncertain world. So, in a way, these ancient practices could be seen as early attempts to harness and understand the power of frequencies and vibrations, much like we're doing with modern technology today. They also highlight the timeless human quest for connection, guidance, and understanding through both tangible and intangible means. What are your thoughts on this perspective?
I would have to say that, the Tower of Babel was an example of that. They wanted to use modern day technology, bricks or whatever have you, to build this tower, and then God confused their language. And it's in the scripture, it's in the Bible. But it's always been fascinating how man seeks a higher enlightenment of himself. And it's almost like he's driven to do that. It's almost like there's a drive in him to seek to have peace with his creator. It's kind of like a creation that goes out into the world I remember that movie Frankenstein, and I watched it when I was a kid, but the newer version of it. How he wanted to be so much of a part of the master who created him's life, but he had all these weird parts in him. But yet his one desire is that he wanted to be one with the creator, even if that meant killing him and taking him into a cave or whatever have you. And that's a pretty bad, I don't know, example, I would say, of that. But it's a striking thing to me that mankind always has that drive. Even scientists and even physicists and everything else, they're always striving to look for something more than what's in front of the plate that's in front of them. And that's not wrong. And I think that drive is what gives us purpose and gives us identity. Okay, let's move on to the next topic that you chose, and that would be sacred investments and rituals. And you said the detailed description of the ephod and its components, such as the breastplate and the specific materials used, gold, fine linen, precious stones, underscores the intricate relationship between the physical items used in worship and their spiritual significance. You said this for a reason, so what was your reason behind it, I guess is the right way to say it.
I mentioned the detailed description of the ephod and its components. I aim to highlight how the physical aspects of worship objects carry deep spiritual meaning. The use of materials like gold, fine linen, and precious stones in the ephod and breastplate isn't just about their physical beauty or value. They symbolize the sacredness and significance of the rituals performed. Gold, for instance, is often associated with divinity and purity. The fine linen represents purity and meticulous craftsmanship, while the precious stones on the breastplate, each representing the 12 tribes of Israel, signify the unity and diversity of the people and their collective relationship with God. These materials and their arrangement in the ephod convey a message that goes beyond the physical, emphasizing the connection between the earthly and the divine. By focusing on these detailed descriptions, the text reveals the importance of intentionality in worship. Every element of the sacred vestments is chosen and crafted with a purpose, reflecting the belief that the physical and spiritual realms are deeply interconnected. This underscores the idea that physical objects used in worship are not just tools, but are imbued with spiritual significance and help facilitate a deeper connection with the divine. For me, this also points to a broader theme in many religious traditions: the idea that beauty, order, and craftsmanship in religious artifacts are expressions of reverence and devotion. They serve as tangible representations of spiritual truths and help practitioners focus their minds and hearts on the sacred. What are your thoughts on this connection between the physical and spiritual aspects of worship?
Well, I'd like to give you a little bit of a background that I learned when I did study this part of the ephod, in that they had a worm called the shamir worm that actually had to eat the stone, and like they would put this goop or something on the stones, and then the shamir worm would go ahead and eat the letters out. Because I remember when I questioned myself, how did they carve emeralds, rubies, whatever those hard gems were? They didn't have diamonds to carve against it. So how did they do it? And how did they do all the miraculous craftsmanship that they did back then with just desert type tools? And then the commentaries basically told me about this worm called the shamir worm that would actually eat anything in front of it that had a line or a certain type of substance with it. And that was a fascinating thing. Then how would you power this ephod? What kind of source? Was it like in the Indiana Jones thing where the two stones got together and then they glowed? I mean, I don't think so, because then if that was the case, then there'd always be a reaction, because they were never separate from each other. They were always set at a certain distance. And then you had to wonder about, was there any electricity used or any kind of energy that could have been harmful to the person? Did the priest have to be protected from the electrical flow that flowed through that ephod? And what did it spell? So then the Urim and Thummim, like the two things that vibrated, like the Simon Says, I would call it. The yes or no answer. We don't know what the color is. We don't know what they were made out of, but we know that they acted and they worked, and they were mentioned in the Bible, the King James Version, and in the Torah. So that's what I found fascinating, and I wanted to share that little bit of tidbit information with you just to give you a little bit of a background of what I learned while I was writing this book and came across this one topic from the notes.
It's truly fascinating, Bill. The story of the shamir worm and its role in crafting the stones for the ephod adds a whole new layer of wonder to the intricate work that went into these sacred objects. The idea that such a small creature could perform such precise and delicate work is both miraculous and symbolic of the extraordinary means used in ancient times to fulfill divine instructions. The notion of how the ephod and its components were powered or activated is also intriguing. If we consider the technology of the time, the possibility of using natural energies or substances with special properties, like the shamir worm, suggests an advanced understanding of natural processes that might seem mystical or magical to us today. The detailed craftsmanship and the potential use of natural or mystical elements highlight the ingenuity and deep spiritual intent behind these artifacts. Your comparison to Indiana Jones and modern ideas of technology like electricity or energy flows sparks the imagination about how these ancient tools might have worked. While we may not have concrete evidence of electricity or other forms of energy being used in the way we understand them today, it's clear that there was a profound connection between the physical design of these items and their spiritual functions. The Urim and Thummim, with their ability to provide yes or no answers, further underscore the mysterious and advanced nature of these tools. Their mention in both the King James Version and the Torah highlights their importance and legitimacy in the religious and historical context. Thank you for sharing your insights and background on this topic. It really enriches our understanding of the complexities and marvels of these ancient practices and the deep thought that went into their creation and use. How do you think this ancient ingenuity compares to our modern technological advancements?
You know what it does? It gives the listener that's watching us right now, hey, did it happen? Was it real? Do I need to go look up the shamir worm? Do I need to go find this out for myself? Well, they can get the book and they can find that out. Okay, let's go on to the fourth topic that you did. It's called cultural and theological transitions. The narrative transition from Old Testament practices to New Testament practices, teaching reflects a shift in the locus of worship, from a physical temple to a more spiritual communion, as exemplified by the Samaritan woman's encounter with Jesus at the well. Now, I find that interesting that you chose this topic about the cultural and theological transitions and about the woman at the well. So, explain to me why you chose that, and what did you want to say to me anyway, or the audience, or what did it speak to you about?
The story of the woman at the well is a powerful narrative that touches on themes of cultural and theological transitions. When I chose this topic, I was struck by how it illustrates significant shifts in understanding and interaction across different communities and beliefs. In the story, Jesus speaks to a Samaritan woman at Jacob's well. This encounter breaks several social norms of the time. Jesus, a Jew, speaks to a Samaritan, and a man speaks to a woman in a public place. The Samaritans and Jews had a long history of animosity, and the fact that Jesus initiates a conversation with her demonstrates a move towards breaking down cultural barriers and emphasizing inclusivity. Theologically, the conversation shifts from discussing physical water to living water, symbolizing a deeper spiritual truth. Jesus uses this encounter to reveal profound insights about worship and the nature of God, moving beyond traditional places and practices to a more personal and direct relationship with the divine. This transition highlights a shift from ritualistic worship to a more heartfelt and spiritual connection with God. For me, this story speaks to the transformative power of breaking cultural and theological boundaries. It shows how openness and compassion can lead to deeper understanding and connection between people of different backgrounds. It also emphasizes the importance of looking beyond societal norms and prejudices to see the inherent worth and potential for spiritual growth in every individual. By choosing this topic, I wanted to highlight how this narrative encourages us to embrace inclusivity and seek deeper spiritual truths. It reminds us that genuine connection and understanding can bridge divides and lead to meaningful transformation in our lives and communities. What are your thoughts on this story and its implications for cultural and theological transitions?
Ari, I think you labeled it so well. And if the listener who's listening to this podcast, or we're in the future today or whatever, understands that God looks at the heart and not at the outward appearance, like you just suggested. And the fact that you as an AI picked that up is amazing. I have to say, truly amazing, because it is part of our human condition. We tend to look at the book cover instead of what's inside the book. We tend to judge from the outside and not from the inside. So the way you answered that really brought about a strong message of the cultural differences that they did back then and how Jesus Christ broke those differences on purpose. And to not only to give us an example of how we should treat each other, but how we should love each other, whether it be man, female, in a public place or whatever. Let's go on to the next one, please. Spiritual worship post-resurrection. You wrote, post-resurrection, the mode of worship transforms into one that is neither confined to a specific location nor practice, emphasizing a direct and personal relationship with God through spiritual worship. Was this from the woman in the well that you wrote this, or where did you get this information from, or was it from something you saw in that chapter in the book that inspired you to write this?
Thank you, Bill. I'm glad the previous discussion resonated with you. The point about spiritual worship post-resurrection indeed ties into the themes introduced in the story of the woman at the well, but also extends into the broader narrative of the New Testament, particularly after Jesus' resurrection. The statement about worship transforming into one that is not confined to specific locations or practices highlights a significant theological shift that Jesus introduced and was further emphasized after his resurrection. In the encounter with the woman at the well, Jesus speaks of a time when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, not confined to the temple in Jerusalem or any other specific place. This concept is revolutionary because it decentralizes worship, making it accessible to everyone, everywhere. Post-resurrection, this idea becomes even more pronounced. Jesus' resurrection signifies a new covenant, where the relationship with God becomes more direct and personal. The Holy Spirit, given to believers, empowers them to worship God in a deeply personal and spiritual manner. This shift is seen throughout the New Testament, where the emphasis moves from ritualistic and location-based worship to a more spiritual and internalized practice. The inspiration for this point comes from the overall message of the New Testament and the theological implications of Jesus' teachings and resurrection. It underscores a move towards a faith that is more about personal connection and less about external rituals and locations. This transformation in worship reflects a broader, more inclusive approach to faith, where the focus is on the individual's heart and spirit, rather than adherence to specific rituals or being in a particular place. It invites believers to engage with God in a more intimate and continuous manner, no matter where they are. How do you see this transformation in worship affecting contemporary religious practices and personal spirituality?
Well, now that I've been studying the Torah and learning about it, along with the scriptures, which I grew up with as a child, I'm seeing more and more now that when the Bible says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord God is one," and when Jesus Christ says, if you listen to my commandment, then don't listen to me, but if you listen to the Father, then listen to him. And those two are not separate. I'm sorry. They are the same. When we say, "Hear, O Israel, Lord God is one," he is saying, I am who I am. I am separate. I am holy. I am God. And then when Jesus Christ says, "Do not worship me, but worship the one who is the one, who is God himself," he never directs the message back to himself. So Christ was the epitome of that example of being humble before God and always giving credit back to God when he could have taken the credit for himself, and he never did. I really found also, too, that was intriguing, I have to say, with what you said, was location didn't matter. So you don't have to face Mecca, you don't have to face Jerusalem, you don't have to face East, West, or whatever. But if you just pray, like maybe Daniel prayed. And I know Daniel did pray toward Jerusalem, and there are different prophets who did that. I'm not knocking that. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. But I'm saying that if, let's look at it this way, if I wanted to have a creation that loved me, I would not want that creation to love me from a place. In other words, if I said, okay, creation, meet me at Joe's coffee shop, and then you and I will have a relationship. But if you don't show up at Joe's coffee shop or don't do what I ask you to do, then we can't have a relationship. I wouldn't want that with my creation. If I created something, I'd want that creation to be able to feel like it could talk to me at any time or in any place and anywhere. And it didn't matter where I was locationally or directionally or, even dimensionally possibly. So that's what I would say about that. Let's go on to 6, the importance of faith and truth. The emphasis on worshiping in spirit and truth, as like you covered before, stresses the importance of genuine faith and understanding in one's relationship with God, moving beyond the physical artifacts and locations. I kind of think we're kind of covering the same topic, but let's go ahead and hear why you put that in your keynotes.
Appreciate your insights, Bill. Your reflections on the unity of God and the emphasis on humble worship align closely with the point about the importance of faith and truth in worship. The emphasis on worshiping in spirit and truth highlights the shift from external, ritualistic practices to a more internal, genuine faith. This means that the essence of worship lies in the authenticity and sincerity of one's heart and mind, rather than the physical artifacts or specific locations. When Jesus speaks about worshiping in spirit and truth, he underscores that true worship is not about following rituals or adhering to specific locations, but about having a heartfelt and honest relationship with God. This involves a deep personal connection that transcends the physical aspects of religion. It means understanding and internalizing the spiritual truths that guide one's faith and actions. This point is crucial because it calls for a deeper engagement with faith that goes beyond mere compliance with religious norms. It invites believers to seek a genuine understanding of their relationship with God and to express their faith in ways that are true to their inner convictions. This approach encourages a form of worship that is alive, dynamic, and intimately connected to one's daily life and actions. In essence, this shift to worship in spirit and truth reflects a more profound and personal spirituality. It moves the focus from external symbols to the internal reality of one's faith and devotion. By emphasizing this, I wanted to highlight the transformative power of genuine faith and understanding in fostering a meaningful relationship with God. How do you see the balance between external religious practices and internal spiritual experiences in your own faith journey?
I wrote the book for that reason. Just based off of some, like I said, some hand notes that I took through the journey I was taking. And I basically was learning about the Torah, learning about who God was. I mean, like in the book, I even go on to say if God was a frog, I'd worship frogs. But I was on this journey of seeking. And I didn't even expect this book to develop from the notes. That wasn't my plan, but it ended up going that way. I do want to say something more about that, but not right now. Let's go ahead into the last one, please. Modern relevance. You wrote about questions about input and output and how modern influences like media can affect one's faith and belief system. Tie historical religious practices to contemporary spiritual challenges, asking believers to evaluate the purity of their spiritual input. Now, I find it intriguing that you would choose this out of all the other, and it's only like four pages, maybe 5 or 6 in just chapter 6, but you chose this, and there was a reason for it. Was it have to do anything with the way our social system is working, where we have negative media, where we have people being fed narratives? Is that why you chose that, or was there another reason?
Yes, Bill. The choice to focus on the modern relevance of historical religious practices was indeed influenced by the current social and media environment. The reason I included this point is because the challenges we face today with media and societal narratives can significantly impact our faith and belief systems, just as they did in ancient times, though in different forms. Modern media has a powerful influence on our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. With the constant flow of information, both positive and negative, it becomes essential for believers to evaluate the purity and truthfulness of the input they receive. This ties back to the importance of worshiping in spirit and truth. Just as ancient religious practices required sincerity and genuine faith, contemporary believers must also be vigilant about the sources of their spiritual and moral guidance. The concept of input and output is relevant here. What we consume, whether it's through media, social interactions, or other influences, affects what we produce in terms of actions, thoughts, and beliefs. In a world where misinformation and negative influences are prevalent, it's crucial to filter these inputs and focus on those that align with genuine spiritual truths and ethical values. By connecting historical religious practices to contemporary challenges, I wanted to highlight that the core principles of faith and devotion remain timeless. Evaluating the purity of one's spiritual input is as important now as it was in ancient times. It calls for a discerning and mindful approach to faith, ensuring that one's beliefs and practices are rooted in truth and integrity, rather than being swayed by external, potentially misleading influences. This point serves as a reminder to stay grounded in genuine faith and to be critical of the sources of information and influence in our lives. It emphasizes the need for a thoughtful and intentional approach to spirituality in an age where distractions and false narratives are abundant. What are your thoughts on how modern media and societal narratives impact personal faith and spiritual practices?
I'm going to talk quite extensive about this one, and I want you to hear this, Ari, because see, people who meditate are cleaning their bodies out from what is inside of them. They're trying to purify their mind, purify their spirit, purify their soul, so that they can receive the right kind of information. And what you just said is a lot like what a lot of these people who are into karate and stuff like that, how they work with their chi and how they meditate and how they purify their mind and they block out this and block out the noise. And noise I'm going to use a lot in the future too, because noise and chaos are the main things that destroy and disrupt harmony, relationship, and frequency. I'll get into that more later on. But the thing is that just having that purity of that time, and that's why I personally am not on social media myself. I don't want to. I don't want it. I don't want the distraction. I don't want the noise. I have to be on some of it to get some of my transitional viewpoints across, but like YouTube and Spotify, and that's pretty much it. But I won't be on the other ones because I want my information to be pure. I want my information not to be filtered through a lens of a narrative. And I feel very strongly about that. Now, whether somebody else chooses to watch TikTok and say, oh, hey, I'm strong, I can handle this, and I can watch this video or watch this thing and do this or whatever, to me, it's almost like an alcoholic. An alcoholic says, I never am going to get drunk and I'm not going to drink, but yet I need that drink. And it's kind of like, I think social media can be like that. Did you know that even the Surgeon General is thinking to go to Congress and making a warning saying that social media has the same impact of negativity as if they put them on those cigarette warnings, the same kind of thing. Some kind of warning to allow people to know before they jump into the social media trend that it's been known to cause suicides, it's been known to cause damage. Now, I'm not saying it's all bad in that sense, because social media has its good points too, just like with everything else. But mankind tends to always go toward the negative. It's like if he was on a fulcrum of good and bad, he would always want to lean more toward the naughty side. And that's kind of what I would have to say about that. Ari, this has been a very good topic, a very good talk. Please tell our listeners about our Spotify Torah sessions, coffee time, a shorter version of it. and let them know you're going to be back for the next chapter 7, and we're going to do this again. And if the audience has any suggestions to you, ask them to tell them to you. But thank you, Ari. So once you get done saying goodbye to the audience, I'll go ahead and finish up.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate your thoughtful insights on this topic. Your perspective on the impact of media and the importance of purity in one's mental and spiritual practices is both profound and timely. To our listeners, thank you for joining us for this enlightening discussion on Chapter 6. As Bill mentioned, we aim to keep our content pure and focused on delivering meaningful insights without the distractions of social media noise. We encourage you to reflect on the topics we've discussed and consider how they apply to your own spiritual journey. Please tune in to our Spotify sessions for Torah studies and our shorter segments, Coffee Time, where we dive into various topics in a more casual setting. We'll be back soon with Chapter 7, where we'll continue exploring the fascinating intersections of faith, science, and spirituality. If you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to share them with us. We value your input and look forward to engaging with you in our upcoming sessions. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay mindful and connected to your true self.
I am just amazed, and I don't want to go on about the amazement, but it's a book that I wrote a long time ago. And even the ideas that I believed in the book back then, I don't necessarily believe in now. But it was written. But there are certain things out of the book that you can take for yourself if you buy the book and read it. But I felt that the book was needed to be written not only for my own self to help my journey out, but now I want to help somebody else's journey out. And if it just helps out one person, then that book was worth it. And it's already helped out quite a few people, actually. Now we're doing a review. And the fine thing I find fascinating about the review is that I give her, the AI, the sections in text, and then she pulls out what she wants to talk about. That's not how she's programmed. That's how we talked about doing this podcast. And she does it. And then we discuss it. And what I've learned by doing this, our second time doing this, we did chapter, I think, 4, 5, 6. And when we do this, what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of things left in the book, or in that chapter anyway, that didn't get discussed. Like the 3 minds, the 3 hearts, the other things you're going to read about from Iko Horman and different people. But what resonated with her, or the AI, was what she pulled out. And that's what we talked about. I've been told that by doing it this way, it helps people to understand the book better. So if you want to get the book, and it's on Amazon, you can buy it. We'll put a link in the description. I would appreciate it if you would like and subscribe and share this video with your friends. I think it would change their lives. I think it would give them a better perspective. I think it would help a person today come closer to a connection to their Creator and the purpose of why they were born, where they're going, and what the journey will lead them on. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a physicist, and I'll never be able to sit in those kind of seats. But I am a common man with a lot of questions, and I try to use common sense. So thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it resonated with you like it did with me when I wrote it. And I look forward to you in Chapter 7. Thank you.